He was a lonely millionaire, used to controlling everything around him, even the silence of the cleaning lady who tidied his office. Suspicious of her mysterious routine, he decided to follow her secretly, hoping to find some wrongdoing. But what he discovered that day made him cry like never before. You will be surprised. Chapter 1. Michael Harrison adjusted his silk tie as he stepped out of the elevator on the 42nd floor of the Renaissance Tower in downtown Detroit. The glass walls of his corner office overlooked the Detroit River, a view that cost more per year than most families earned in a lifetime. He had built his commercial real estate empire from the ground up, transforming abandoned warehouses into luxury condominiums and turning forgotten neighborhoods into profitable ventures. Yet lately, something unexpected had captured his attention, something that had nothing to do with profit margins or development deals. Sarah Mitchell arrived at 5:30 every morning without fail. She moved through his office building like a shadow, her cleaning cartwheels barely making a sound on the polished marble floors. Michael had noticed her efficiency from the start. While other cleaning staff chatted in break rooms or took extended smoke breaks, Sarah worked with quiet precision, never wasting a moment. She was always polite when they crossed paths, offering a simple nod and a soft good morning, but nothing more. No small talk about the weather, no complaints about her shift, no personal revelations of any kind. What began as casual observation had evolved into something Michael could not quite name. He found himself staying late at the office, telling himself it was to finish reports or review contracts, but truthfully, he wanted to see her. There was something about Sarah that intrigued him beyond reason. She never accepted the coffee he offered, never took the holiday bonuses he left in envelopes for the cleaning staff, and she certainly never engaged in the friendly banter that came so naturally to others in her position. She simply did her work and left at exactly 7:15 every evening, disappearing into the Detroit streets without explanation. Michael tried to convince himself his interest was innocent curiosity. But the more Sarah maintained her distance, the more questions filled his mind. Where did she go every night? Why did she refuse even the smallest gestures of kindness? What was she hiding behind those calm brown eyes that never quite met his gaze? One evening, as autumn rain streaked the office windows, Michael made a decision he would later question. He called his personal attorney, David Chen, and asked for a recommendation. 2 days later, a private investigator named Tom Bradley sat across from him in a dimly lit coffee shop in Midtown. I need to know where she goes, Michael said, sliding an envelope across the table. Her routine, her life outside of work. Nothing illegal, just information. Tom Bradley pocketed the envelope without counting it. He had worked cases like this before. Wealthy men with obsessions they could not explain. He asked no questions about Michael's motivations. For 3 weeks, Tom followed Sarah Mitchell through the streets of Detroit. His reports arrived in Michael's email every other day, filling in the blanks of her mysterious life. Sarah took the same bus route every evening, the number 16 heading east into the neighborhoods that Detroit's revival had not yet reached. She transferred twice, each time moving deeper into areas where streetlights flickered and broken windows were patched with cardboard. The final destination shocked Michael when he saw the photographs. An abandoned school building in the east side, its windows boarded up and graffiti covering the brick walls. According to Tom's report, Sarah entered through a side door every evening at 8 o'clock. She stayed until nearly midnight, then took the late bus back to a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. What is she doing in there? Michael demanded during their next meeting. Tom spread photographs across the table. Through gaps in the boarded windows, his telephoto lens had captured something unexpected. Children, dozens of them sitting in circles on the floor. Sarah reading to them from worn books. Sarah bandaging a young boy's scraped knee. Sarah distributing soup from a large pot, while an elderly woman helped her serve. It is an informal shelter, Tom explained. No official permits, no government funding. From what I gathered asking around the neighborhood, she has been running it for almost 3 years. Takes in street kids, runaways, children whose parents work night shifts and have nowhere else to put them. She teaches them to read, helps with homework, makes sure they eat. Does it all on her cleaning salary. Michael stared at the photographs, his chest tightening with an emotion he could not name. In one image, Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by children in mismatched clothes and worn sneakers. She was smiling, truly smiling in a way he had never seen during their brief hallway encounters. Her face was softer, younger, filled with a light that transformed her completely. "How much does she spend on this?" Michael asked quietly. Tom shrugged. "Based on the supplies I saw being delivered, probably most of what she earns. The neighbors say she skips meals sometimes to make sure the kids have enough food." Michael sent Tom away with a final payment and sat alone in his office for hours, watching the city lights blink on across the Detroit skyline. He thought about his own wealth, the expensive suits in his closet, the luxury sedan in his private parking space, the vacation home in the Hamptons he visited twice a year. He thought about Sarah taking 3 buses through dangerous neighborhoods to feed children with money she could barely spare. That night, he made calls to medical suppliers and food distributors, arranging anonymous donations to be delivered to community centers in the East Side. He told himself he was simply helping, doing what any decent person would do. But deep down, he knew the truth was more complicated. Chapter 2. 3 weeks passed before Sarah confronted Michael. She arrived at his office earlier than usual one morning, her expression harder than he had ever seen it. The cleaning cart sat abandoned in the hallway. She stood in his doorway, arms crossed, waiting for him to look up from his computer. "We need to talk," she said quietly, but there was steel in her voice. "Now." Michael felt his stomach drop. "Of course," he stammered. "Please come in." Sarah closed the door behind her and remained standing. "The medical supplies that appeared at the community clinic last week," she began. "The cases of canned food delivered to the church on Gratiot Avenue. The anonymous donation that paid for new blankets and winter coats. That was you, was it not?" Michael opened his mouth to deny it, but the look in her eyes stopped him. "I wanted to help," he said finally. You thought what exactly?" Sarah's voice rose slightly. "That you could fix my life without asking? That I needed saving? No, that is not what I meant." Michael stood up, moving around his desk. "I saw what you were doing, how hard you work. I just wanted to make it easier. You saw?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "How exactly did you see, Mr. Harrison? Were you following me?" The silence that followed was damning. Michael could not meet her gaze. "I hired someone," he admitted. "A private investigator. I needed to understand why you were so what? Distant? Private?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "So you violated my privacy because I would not chat with you in the hallway? Because I would not accept your coffee?" "It was not like that," Michael protested weakly. "Then what was it like?" Sarah stepped closer, and Michael could see tears forming in her eyes. "Do you have any idea how it feels to discover that someone has been watching you, studying your life like you are some kind of project? I am not one of your real estate deals, Mr. Harrison. I am a person." Michael felt shame wash over him, hot and suffocating. "You are right," he said quietly. "I am sorry. I should never have—" "Sorry does not change what you did." Sarah wiped her eyes angrily. "You want to know why I do what I do? Why I spend every night in that abandoned school with those children?" She did not wait for him to answer. 22 years ago, I was one of those children. I grew up in the East Side, in a neighborhood just like the one you had me followed to. My parents worked in a factory owned by men like you, men who cared more about profit than safety. When the fire started, there were no proper exits, no sprinkler system, no emergency protocols. My mother and father did not come home that night. Neither did 16 other workers. Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "Sarah, I was 8 years old," she continued, her voice shaking. "They separated me from my younger brothers, sent us to different foster homes. I ended up with an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, who lived in a tiny house on the East Side. She had almost nothing, but she gave me everything. She taught me that the greatest thing you can do in this world is help someone who cannot help themselves. Not for recognition, not for tax breaks, but because it is right." "I never knew," Michael whispered. "Of course you did not know. Why would you?" Sarah turned toward the door. "I came to this country with nothing after aging out of foster care. I worked 3 jobs to save enough for a bus ticket to Detroit. I became a cleaning lady because it was honest work and it paid enough for me to help others. I do not need your charity, Mr. Harrison. Those children do not need a rich man playing hero. We need respect, dignity, and the freedom to help ourselves. Wait, please." Michael moved to block her path. "You are right about everything. I was wrong, completely wrong. But do not punish those children because of my mistake. Let me help properly the right way. And what is the right way? Sarah challenged. Writing checks from your office tower, sending anonymous donations so you can feel better about yourself? No, Michael said, an idea forming even as he spoke. I will come there. To the shelter. Not as Michael Harrison the millionaire, but as a volunteer. I will work alongside you. Help in whatever way you need, and I will not tell anyone who I am or throw money around. I will earn the right to help. Sarah studied him for a long moment, searching his face for sincerity. If you come, she said finally, you work like everyone else. You sweep floors, you help with homework, you serve food. No special treatment, no recognition. And if I tell you to leave, you leave. Understood? Understood, Michael agreed. One more thing. Sarah's voice softened slightly. Those children have been let down by too many adults already. If you start this, you commit to it. You cannot walk away when it gets difficult or when you get bored of playing poor. I will not walk away, Michael promised, hoping desperately that he could keep that promise. Sarah left without another word, leaving her cleaning cart in the hallway. Michael never saw her in the office building again. She had quit. He learned from the building manager later that day, given no notice, no explanation, simply turned in her uniform and walked away. The manager complained about the inconvenience, but Michael barely heard him. He was too busy wondering if Sarah would keep her part of their agreement, or if he had lost his chance to make things right. Chapter 3. Michael arrived at the abandoned school building on a cold November evening. Wearing old jeans and a plain jacket he had purchased specifically for this purpose. His hands shook slightly as he knocked on the side door. Sarah opened it, her expression unreadable. You came, she said simply, stepping aside to let him enter. Inside, the building was nothing like Michael had imagined. Makeshift partitions created separate areas for different activities. In one corner, children sat at mismatched tables doing homework by the light of battery-powered lamps. In another, a group played a card game on the floor. The smell of vegetable soup filled the air, mixing with the scent of old books and cleaning supplies. This is Mrs. Patterson, Sarah said, gesturing to the elderly woman Michael had seen in the investigator's photographs. She helps me run this place. Mrs. Patterson, this is Michael. He will be volunteering with us. Mrs. Patterson studied Michael with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through his carefully chosen humble outfit. We will see how long he lasts, she said finally. Sarah, the little ones need help with their reading in the back room. Michael, you can start by mopping the bathroom. Bucket is by the door. The bathroom, Michael soon discovered, was in terrible condition. The plumbing barely worked, the tiles were cracked, and years of neglect had left stains that resisted even his most vigorous scrubbing. By the time he finished, his back ached and his hands were raw. He found Sarah in the main room, sitting cross-legged on the floor with 5 children gathered around her. Much better, she said, glancing at him. Now you can help Marcus with his math homework. He is struggling with fractions. Marcus turned out to be an 11-year-old boy with intelligent eyes and a guarded expression. He sat at a wobbly table, staring at a worksheet covered in crossed-out attempts. Michael pulled up a chair beside him. Fractions giving you trouble? Michael asked gently. Marcus shrugged. I do not get the point. When am I ever going to use this stuff anyway? Michael thought about all the times he used math in his business, calculating percentages and ratios, analyzing profit margins. But he knew that answer would mean nothing to Marcus. Instead, he said, how about I show you a trick my teacher taught me when I was your age? For the next hour, Michael worked with Marcus, using slices of the bread Sarah had brought for sandwiches to demonstrate how fractions worked. Slowly, Marcus began to understand, and when he finally solved a problem on his own, his face lit up with pride. See, you are smarter than you thought, Michael said, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the space heaters humming in the corners. Over the following weeks, Michael returned to the shelter every evening after work. He learned the names of all 23 children who regularly attended. There was Emily, a 6-year-old girl who loved stories about princesses. There was Jordan, a teenager who dreamed of becoming a mechanic. There was little Maya, who rarely spoke but drew beautiful pictures on scraps of paper. He also learned that gaining the children's trust was far more difficult than closing business deals. They had been disappointed too many times by adults who made promises they did not keep. When Michael missed 2 evenings because of emergency work meetings, several children refused to work with him the next time he came. "You left," Maya said simply, turning her back on him. "I'm sorry," Michael said, kneeling down to her level. "Something important came up at work. But I am here now, and I will try my best not to miss again." "That is what they all say," Jordan muttered from across the room. Michael realized then that his word meant nothing here. Only his actions would speak for him. He began delegating more at his company, clearing his evenings, making the shelter his priority. Slowly, painfully slowly, the children began to trust him again. One night, a little girl named Rosie developed a high fever. Sarah checked her temperature and paled. "She needs to see a doctor," Sarah said quietly to Michael. "But the nearest clinic that will see patients without insurance is closed until morning." "Let me call someone," Michael offered. "I know a pediatrician who—" "No," Sarah cut him off. Then she seemed to reconsider. "Unless," she added slowly, "you are willing to let me pay you back as a loan, not charity." Michael wanted to argue, to tell her that money meant nothing to him compared to a child's health, but he saw the fierce pride in Sarah's eyes and understood. Of course he agreed. A loan. The pediatrician came within the hour, examining Rosie in a back room while Sarah and Michael waited anxiously. "Mild infection," the doctor reported. "Some antibiotics and rest, and she will be fine." After the doctor left, Sarah sat down heavily on a folding chair. "Thank you," she said quietly. "And I mean it. I will repay you." "I know you will," Michael replied. But that night revealed a larger problem. They needed regular access to medical care, proper supplies, a relationship with healthcare providers who understood their situation. Over the next several days, Michael and Sarah discussed options, their conversations growing longer and more comfortable. Yet every suggestion Michael made that involved significant money brought back the old tension, Sarah's walls going back up as she insisted on maintaining their independence. Then everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon when Michigan Child Protective Services showed up at the shelter with police officers. Someone had filed a complaint about children living in unsanitary conditions without proper supervision or legal guardianship. Despite Sarah's protests, despite Mrs. Patterson's desperate explanations, the social workers began documenting everything, taking photographs, asking the children questions that made them cry. Within 2 hours, buses arrived to transport the children to different temporary facilities across the city. "No, please," Sarah begged as they led Marcus away. "He has nowhere else to go." "None of them do. This is their home." But the social workers were unmoved. The building was condemned, they explained. There were no licensed adults, no proper facilities, no legal framework for what Sarah was doing. The children would be placed in official foster homes and group facilities until permanent arrangements could be made. Michael watched in horror as the children were separated, some crying, others silent with shock. Emily clung to Sarah's legs until a social worker gently pried her away. Jordan punched a wall in frustration. Little Maya said nothing at all, her eyes empty. When the last bus drove away, Sarah collapsed onto the floor, her body shaking with sobs. Mrs. Patterson sat beside her, her weathered hand stroking Sarah's hair. Michael stood helplessly, feeling more powerless than he had ever felt in his life. All his money, all his connections, and he could not stop this. "We will get them back," he said finally, his voice firm. "Sarah, I promise you, we will get them back." Chapter 4. The lawyer's office smelled of old books and coffee. Michael had called the best family attorney in Michigan, prepared to write whatever check was necessary. But when Jennifer Morrison sat down across from them, it was Sarah who took control of the conversation. "I need to explain the situation carefully," Sarah began, pulling out a worn folder filled with documents. "These children are not all the same. Some have documentation issues because their parents are undocumented immigrants. Others are runaways from abusive situations. A few, like Marcus, have no living relatives at all. We cannot approach this with a one-size-fits-all strategy." Jennifer looked surprised, then impressed. "You have clearly dealt with the system before." "I have been fighting it since I was 8 years old," Sarah replied. "I know every loophole, every form, every judge in this county. What I need from you is the legal authority to file the motions I already know we need." For the next 2 hours, Sarah outlined a complex strategy. She knew which children could be returned through emergency custody hearings, which ones needed different legal approaches, which families could be helped with proper documentation. Michael sat quietly, realizing that Sarah's intelligence and experience far exceeded his own understanding of these issues. She was not someone who needed rescuing. She was a warrior who had been fighting this battle alone for years. "We will start with Marcus," Sarah decided. "He is the clearest case. No living family, and we can demonstrate he was thriving under our care. Both of you," Jennifer asked, looking between them. "You are requesting joint guardianship?" "Yes," Sarah said firmly, glancing at Michael. "Is that acceptable to you?" "More than acceptable," Michael replied, feeling something shift in his chest. The court hearings were brutal. Judges questioned their relationship, their living situations, their motivations. But Sarah's preparation and knowledge impressed even the skeptical magistrates. She cited statutes, referenced previous cases, and spoke with a passion that could not be manufactured. Slowly, they made progress. Marcus was released into their shared custody, requiring them to coordinate schedules and share responsibilities in a way that brought them closer together. But just as things seemed to be stabilizing, Michael's business partner, Robert Chen, called an emergency board meeting. Michael arrived at the Renaissance Tower conference room to find Robert smiling in a way that made his stomach turn. "I have heard interesting things about your new hobby," Robert said as the other board members took their seats. "Volunteering at a shelter, taking in a foster child. Very heartwarming." "It is not a hobby," Michael replied carefully. "It is something I believe in." "Perfect," Robert continued, "because I believe we can turn this into an incredible marketing opportunity. Think about it. Successful businessman gives back to the community, transforms lives. We create a campaign around it, position Harrison Enterprises as socially conscious, maybe even get some tax benefits from making it an official corporate charity. The publicity alone would be worth millions." "No," Michael said flatly. Robert's smile faded. "Excuse me," I said. "No. This is not for sale, Robert. These are real children, real lives. I will not exploit them for corporate profit." The room fell silent. Robert leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Then we have a problem, Michael, because some of us on this board are concerned about where your priorities lie lately. You have been distracted, delegating important decisions, and now we discover you are involved in something that could damage our reputation if it goes wrong. If you will not let us control the narrative, perhaps it is time for new leadership." Michael looked around the table at the other board members, seeing calculation in their eyes. These were the men he had built his empire with, but he realized now that they had never understood what truly mattered. "Are you threatening me?" "I am offering you a choice," Robert replied. "Play ball or play somewhere else." Michael stood up slowly. "Then I choose somewhere else. I will buy out my shares, restructure the company, and you can all continue profiting without me. But I will not turn Sarah's work into a publicity stunt." The legal battle that followed was exhausting. Michael's lawyers worked to untangle his holdings from the company, while Robert spread rumors in the business community about Michael's instability. Partnerships fell through, deals collapsed, and Michael's reputation took hit after hit in the Detroit business pages. But every evening, he showed up at the temporary space the church had loaned them for the shelter, and he saw the difference they were making. Then Jordan, the teenager who dreamed of being a mechanic, was accused of taking tools from a local hardware store. The owner, a man named Bill Tucker, claimed he had seen Jordan pocket expensive drill bits. Jordan insisted he was innocent, but Bill refused to drop the accusation. Terrified of being sent to juvenile detention, Jordan disappeared. "We have to find him," Sarah said, her face pale with worry. "He is scared, and scared teenagers make terrible decisions." The police were looking for Jordan, but Michael knew they would not be gentle when they found him. He made a decision that would cost him even more professionally. He went on local news, spoke at community meetings, and publicly defended Jordan. He called out the prejudice that made people assume a young man from the East Side must be a thief. He challenged Bill Tucker directly, demanding proof and offering to pay for store security cameras to be reviewed. The backlash was immediate. Business associates distanced themselves. Social media exploded with accusations that Michael was defending criminals. His remaining corporate partnerships threatened to dissolve. But Michael refused to back down. 3 days later, Jordan showed up at the shelter, thin and scared, but safe. Sarah held him while he cried, promising him that he was not alone. And when Bill Tucker quietly admitted that he had found the missing drill bits in his own back inventory room, Michael did not gloat. He simply focused on helping Jordan heal from the fear and stigma he had endured. That night, as they sat in the empty shelter, after the children had gone to sleep in the church's temporary housing, Sarah looked at Michael with new eyes. "You lost so much for us," she said softly. "Your company, your reputation, your standing in the community." "I lost things that do not matter," Michael replied. "I found things that do." Sarah reached across the space between them and took his hand. "I was wrong about you," she admitted. "At first I thought you were just another rich man looking for purpose. But you have proven me wrong every single day." Michael squeezed her hand gently, feeling the calluses from years of hard work. "You were not wrong to be cautious. I had to earn this. I am still earning it." They sat in comfortable silence, their hands joined, until Mrs. Patterson came to lock up for the night. She looked at them and smiled, a knowing expression on her weathered face. "About time," she muttered, and both Michael and Sarah laughed.